In Silicon Valley, there's a saying, fake it till you make it. And in the mid-2000s, no one embodied that phrase more than a young woman with a black turtleneck, a baritone voice, and a dream. Her name was Elizabeth Holmes, and she promised a revolution. Hundreds of medical tests from just one drop of blood. No more needles, no more waiting days for results. Just a finger prick and a box the size of a toaster that could read your health like a book. It sounded like science fiction. But Silicon Valley had already given the world iPhones, Google, and electric cars. Why not this? Investors agreed. They threw money at Holmes like she was selling bottled immortality. Walgreens and Safeway signed deals. Former U.S. Secretaries of State sat on her board. By 2014, her company, Theranos, was valued at $9 billion. Elizabeth Holmes was hailed as the female Steve Jobs. She even wore the black turtlenecks to prove it. But behind the curtains of her high-security labs, the miracle machine, codenamed Edison, wasn't a medical breakthrough. It was a glorified paperweight with a syringe attached. The origin story. Elizabeth Holmes was a Stanford dropout with a knack for storytelling. At 19, she left the university, claiming she had a vision torgent to wait for graduation. The story was irresistible, a young, brilliant woman disrupting the old boys club of medicine and technology. She told anyone who would listen that her invention could detect everything from cholesterol to cancer with a single drop of blood. For a public terrified of needles, it was a dream. For investors, it was a goldmine. And here's the thing. Holmes really believed it, or at least she convinced herself she did. That's the secret ingredient in any good fraud: sincerity. It's easier to sell a lie when you believe it too. Building the cult Theranos wasn't just a company. It was a cult of personality. Holmes spoke in a low, almost hypnotic voice, deliberately deeper than her natural one. Some employees later swore she faked the voice entirely. Either way, it gave her authority. When she said something, people listened. She surrounded herself with powerful names: Henry Kissinger, George Shultz, James Mattis. Not scientists, not doctors, but men with gravitas. Her board looked more like a Cold War reunion than a healthcare startup. And that was the genius: credibility by association. If Kissinger believed in her, who were you to doubt her? Investors fell over themselves to get in. Billionaires like Rupert Murdoch, the Walton family, and Betsy DeVos poured in hundreds of millions. They didn't ask too many questions. When a 19-year-old in a black turtleneck tells you she's revolutionizing medicine, apparently you just nod and write the check. The machine that didn't work. Inside Theranos HQ, however, reality was messy. The Edison machine was supposed to test blood with microfluidics and advanced sensors. In practice, it was a temperamental box that broke down if you looked at it the wrong way. It couldn't run hundreds of tests. It could barely run a dozen, and even then the results were often wrong. Some tests needed so much dilution that the one drop of blood became 5 vials. When patients got results, chaos followed. A woman was told she had miscarried when she hadn't. Another got a cancer scare, false positive. Others were told they were fine when they weren't. In medicine, false results aren't just inconvenient. They can kill. But Holmes and her right-hand man, Sunny Balwani, her secret boyfriend, 19 years older, with a temper that could strip paint, demanded loyalty and silence. Employees who questioned the tech were pushed out. NDAs were enforced like sacred vows. Labs were locked down. Even teams inside Theranos didn't know what other teams were working on. It was secrecy worthy of the CIA, except the CIA usually has working equipment. The Walgreens deal. Here's where the story goes from startup drama to dark comedy. Walgreens, yes, the pharmacy chain, agreed to roll out Theranos blood testing machines in its stores. Imagine popping into Walgreens for a Coke, some gum, and a fraudulent medical test. Except the Edison machine didn't work. So behind the scenes, Theranos quietly ran many tests on Siemens machines, the same conventional lab equipment the company claimed to have disrupted. In other words, customers thought they were getting revolutionary technology. They were getting the same old tech, just with a prettier lie attached. When Walgreens executives asked for data, Holmes dazzled them with charisma, vague promises, and the occasional smoke and mirrors demo. One former employee even admitted that when investors toured the lab, staff ran stage-managed demonstrations that looked impressive but produced meaningless results. It was Silicon Valley theater. The whistleblower's every empire has cracks. For Theranos, the cracks came from within. Young employees like Tyler Schultz, grandson of board member George Schultz, saw the fraud up close. He tried to raise alarms, but his own grandfather didn't believe him. Imagine trying to tell your family Christmas dinner that your billionaire CEO is a fraud, and Grandpa says, no, I trust her more than you. Others, like Erica Chung, left in disgust and later testified against Holmes. But speaking out was dangerous. Holmes and Balwani unleashed lawyers, NDAs, and intimidation campaigns on anyone who threatened the illusion. Former employees described feeling hunted. One even said, "They made me feel like I was crazy for telling the truth." The Wall Street Journal expose entered. John Carreyrou, a reporter at the Wall Street Journal. In 2015, he began investigating whispers that Theranos was a house of cards. His article revealed that Edison machines couldn't do what Holmes claimed, and that Theranos was secretly using third-party machines. Holmes fought back like a cornered animal. She went on TV dismissing the journal's reporting as lies. She hired lawyers to threaten Carreyrou and his sources. For a while, the charisma still worked. Some believed her. But the dam had cracked. Regulators began investigating. Walgreens backed out. By 2016, Theranos was unraveling. The $9 billion valuation was gone. The woman once called the next Steve Jobs was now called the next Bernie Madoff. The trial. In 2018, Holmes and Balwani were charged with massive fraud. The trial was surreal. Prosecutors painted Holmes as a manipulator who sold lies for profit. The defense argued she was a naive dreamer, blinded by ambition. The courtroom drama was filled with moments worthy of HBO. Holmes claiming she never intended to mislead, former employees recounting intimidation, and Holmes's carefully curated image, blonde bun, black turtleneck, replaced with softer outfits and a whisper of vulnerability. In 2022, Holmes was convicted on 4 counts of fraud. Balwani was convicted too on even more charges. Holmes now faces more than a decade in prison. The legacy of Theranos. So what do we take away from all this? First, that charisma is a hell of a drug. Holmes convinced billionaires, generals, and secretaries of state to believe in a box that didn't work. She didn't have science, but she had storytelling. Second, that Silicon Valley's culture, move fast and break things, doesn't mix well with healthcare. Breaking your iPhone is inconvenient. Breaking a blood test can ruin a life. And third, that maybe, just maybe, we should stop handing out billions to 19-year-olds in black turtlenecks just because they remind us of Steve Jobs. Today, the Theranos building is empty. The Edison machines sit in storage. Elizabeth Holmes, once celebrated as a visionary, is preparing for prison. And yet, somewhere in Silicon Valley, there's probably another founder rehearsing a pitch about a miracle technology that doesn't quite work. Because the truth is, Theranos wasn't an accident. It was the logical endpoint of a system that rewards belief over proof, hype over honesty. Holmes didn't break the rules. She played the game exactly as the Valley taught her. She just got caught. And the next Holmes? They'll be smarter, smoother, and maybe luckier.